Welcome to the Art of Transition. I'm Gwen Mazza and I'll be your host. We are dedicating this show to On Becoming an Artist in the Real World. Our guest today is Rob Compa. Thank you for coming, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. As we go through the day today, we're going to spend some time exploring his journey of what he's gone through to become an artist and his ongoing movement to become even a greater artist. So if you stay right there, we'll be right back and finish up more with our conversation with Rob. Again, our guest is Rob Compa, and we're going to spend the next half an hour exploring his journey as he has journeyed into the art of music. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Now, you're originally from Rochester.
Yes.
In the Rochester area, and you currently live in Boston.
Yeah.
And you have been an artist pretty much all your life from what I have read about you.
I suppose in some form or another, yeah.
How did you get into the art of music, and can you share with our audience today what exactly your instrument of choice is and all those kinds of things?
Well, I suppose everybody listens to music when they're little. Yeah, everybody does. It's all around you, whether you pay attention to it or not. So until I was about 12 years old, it was there all the time. My dad is a guitarist, so I always used to hear him play. And then when I was about 12 years old, I started, taking it up just from taking music classes.
In school or privately?
Yeah, just in school at first.
Okay.
And my main instrument's always been guitar.
Okay.
And it's funny because I started out hating it in the music class. I couldn't stand it.
You couldn't stand the guitar.
I liked I liked playing drums the best because you could play loud, and the guitar was awkward and uncomfortable. But eventually that ended up being my favorite instrument and the instrument that I could best express myself on. And second to that, really just singing, which I haven't done so much lately, but in prior years that's been a big part of it too. And that's pretty much how I got into it. My dad got me private lessons, bought me a guitar for Christmas, and from there it was all up from there.
So you actually didn't start to play guitar till you were 12?
No.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Because I've had an opportunity to witness, and I don't know if you realize this, I actually saw you out when you were about 15.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, I did. Your dad had said that you were playing, and I went out with a family member, and we witnessed you playing, and you were quite amazing at that time.
Oh, where did you see me play?
It was downtown in one of the places in Rochester, and you were just a young man, and I had a chance to see you, and you were exceptional then, and having listened to you today, it seems there's been a lot of development.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I also understand that after you did high school, you were starting it in high school, you then chose to go on to MCC to start your education formally.
Yeah, because, I had private guitar instruction, which is, teaches you how to play guitar, but, at that point I was a guitar player and not a musician. There's a big difference. There's, being able to play the guitar and move your fingers and learn songs is one thing. But there's another level after that where you're able to express yourself and communicate with other musicians who do different things and play different instruments. And I never got that in high school. There weren't any classes that taught me things like, music theory, things like that. So I wanted to go to, a great school eventually, but I started at MCC so I could get a better education and prepare myself for it in a better way and be able to communicate with other musicians, not just other guitar players. So. Well,
there was a large risk. I know that many students go into school for music, and they typically will go in for education and or performance and those kinds of pieces. And they're very different disciplines.
Yeah.
Very different disciplines. So you were starting out going into MCC, really focusing on music. So much so I understand that your guidance counselor was concerned that you were not going to take any other core courses. Your passion and your heart was
all I did was music. I tried to take a couple other classes.
You did.
You did. The teachers brought me in. I tried to take English and I took math. Or no, not math, history. And I went in and they were like, "You don't really care about this, do you?" And I was like, "Nah, I could care less." So, but they actually, you know, they told me, "So doesn't it just make sense? Go do music." And you know, they're right. You know.
So even they said, "Doesn't it make sense to just?"
Yeah, yeah. And so
it's a pretty risky thing to say.
Yeah,
especially in the way our culture. Yes.
Yeah.
Because typically our culture is set up of, how about if you go in for a business degree, or how about going into medicine or nursing or legal areas?
Yeah.
They really, I mean, as parents, we have a lot of great concerns for our children to be able to take care of themselves and make it in, as in the title of the show, in the real world. And did you have any of those conversations with your mom and dad as you were growing up? And what was that experience like?
Well, they've always been 100%, you know. They did it with my sister. My sister is a painter, an artist, you know. And with both of us, they've both always been big on, you know, do what you're passionate about, you know. But we unfortunately, me and my sister, we never really came up with much of a backup plan, you know.
Okay.
Which is that makes things a little scarier, I guess. But our parents were always really supportive. They told us just to do what we need to do. They, you know, they tried to push us to be well-rounded and have like a backup plan, if you will, and you know. But both of them have always really leaned towards just do what you feel is going to make you happy, and you know.
Follow your dream.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even when it's scary.
Yeah.
Especially when it's scary.
Yeah.
Part of the process for our viewing audience about the process of transition really involves the ability to move through life events, changes that external piece, that what things happen to you. But a transition is actually the psychological, the emotional shifts, all those pieces that go internal for a person to make the move. And I heard you say earlier in our conversation that there's a place where you get to be a guitar player.
Yeah.
And then there's a place that you move to becoming a musician.
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about that, and those who are watching, a little bit about how you know that that's happening.
Well, you know, you learn that mostly just by watching people around you, you know, especially because now, you know, I've been in Boston for 2 years, and there are infinitely more musicians and just people in general there. And you just see it, you watch it happen. Like there's a big difference between those people who can you know, do what they do, but it's closed-minded and
Mechanical?
Yeah,
Almost
mechanical, closed-minded. They, you know, not to say anything, you know, bad about anybody, you know, but just they don't have an open mind, and they don't hear out other things, and you can hear that in their playing, and even when you're like maybe even having a discussion with them as a person, as opposed to somebody who's well-rounded and communicate with other musicians, because that's the biggest part of music, I think, is communicating. Whether or not you're communicating with the audience or with other musicians, both of it is huge, and that's how great music occurs, and just like how you get there, and even beyond being a musician, past that, it's just, I guess, just, you know, being a human being. It all reflects it, you know, learning to communicate with other people and learning to be a generous musician, and so that, you know, if you're playing with a group of people, not playing loud all the time, and being able to recognize what other people are playing, having good ears. It's almost a reflection of if you're just having a conversation with people, and, you know, they go very much hand in hand, you know. Having
a great conversation through music.
Yes. Yeah.
That is just beautiful.
And that's what all music is. It's really is, whether it's written down or improvised. Which improvising's, that's what I love the most. That hits me the hardest. But all music is whether or not it's planned out or spontaneous. Either way, it's very conversational. You know, and that has a lot to do with it. So.
And as I've witnessed some of your life, and just a very small portion of it, and that's most recently since we've gotten to meet together, your journey did not end in MCC, as you said. It actually then took you to Boston.
Yes.
So that was the next leg.
Yes.
Would you be willing to share a little bit about that experience,
Sure.
where you went, what you learned?
Sure. Well, I moved to Boston in May of 2006, and I attended the Berklee College of Music. it's a great place. There's tons of people there. The teachers are great. The other students are great. You know, and I think more than anything, I think I learned more from my peers than from the teachers. The teachers are there as guides, but you know, once classes are done, you're in the dorm rooms, and at night you just play with as many people as you can. You just meet people and play with them and hear what they're playing and get stuff out of that. And that was great. But I stayed there for 4 semesters, and then I decided to leave. I think mostly because I just felt like for all the money that it costs to go to college, there's a lot that you can learn that has nothing to do with school. And some of the best musicians ever have never set foot in college in their life. They went out and they put themselves in these situations of playing with better musicians and like trying to find people to play with that really challenged them and made them get better that way. So I think that was the route that I was interested in, was just finally starting to build a career. And I had met a lot of people at Berklee who I still play with. I'm at the school all the time because the musicians I play with are all people that I met at Berklee. So I think that's where I was coming from when I left, and so now I'm still there in Boston.
Yep, in Boston.
Yes. And I'm teaching private lessons and just playing around the Northeast with bands and you know, original bands, and then also playing any other kind of gig that can give you some money, because it is important, as much as I hate to say it.
That's the part of the real world I think you and I were chatting about before.
You know.
That is, okay, part of the real world demands that we have this source called money to live on. And yes, so you are being paid to play professionally, you're also teaching lessons. You foundationally sound like you got some more pieces at Berklee that you needed to help you feel more centered. And yet, what you also found was a greater gift, in that is you were in the environment of wonderful musicians. A larger pool. A larger pool. Because Rochester really has produced some quite great musicians.
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely. And so now you're moving into a place where you can be in the company of more of them. Would you be willing to just pluck a little for us today so that we can hear some of your talent, whatever you would like? And then we'll talk more about who inspired you after you give us a little bit of taste, and whatever you'd like me to hear or you'd like the audience to hear.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just do... Oh, look at this.
Technology today.
A second here. Okay, well, I suppose I'll do an original that one of my bands has been doing. And it's instrumental, and it's just kind of a nice, quieter piece. And it doesn't have a name yet.
That's great.
But
the unnamed song. Wow. Thank you. That was beautiful. We'll take a quick break here and be back with more conversation with Rob about his experience of becoming an artist in the real world. Welcome back. Again, my guest is Rob Compa, and we're discovering and exploring his journey through becoming an artist in the real world. He is a fabulous guitarist. He currently resides in Boston, and we'll spend some time talking about those folks who influenced you.
Sure.
Who are your top 3 folks who influenced you in music?
Oh, gosh. Well, originally, I guess a big one that started off was Bob Dylan.
Okay.
One of my dad's favorites. And he took me out and he bought me the album Highway 61 Revisited.
He did.
I was in the 8th grade.
Good.
And I still listen to it every day.
Do you really?
Just about, yeah. And I lost it for a while. I had the album for a while and then I lost it. And then I actually went out and bought it again because I love it so much. And that was a big one, very big one. And it's still a big influence in like the kind of sounds that I like to hear and what hits me hard. Another huge one, I mean, most people like this, the Beatles. And a huge one that, like I said earlier, like I love improvisation and you know, spontaneity.
Right.
And a big one with that started me off was the rock band Fish.
Yes. Yes.
They're in the jam band scene. As campy as that kind of sounds, but I love them because they're spontaneous. The improvisation is great. You just hear this like, you know, magical stuff coming out of them that comes out of thin air, just out of communication. It's different every time, but they also have beautiful composition. So I loved that, and I think that was probably the one that hit me the hardest when I first heard them. You know,
was it really?
Yeah.
The one that spoke to you the most?
Definitely. And since, you know, that was around the end of high school that I got into them, and then for a long time I walked around kind of waiting for like when, like, you know, my next obsession would come about. When, like, but I think like I said, you know, I said about there's a difference between being good at whatever instrument you play and being a good musician. And after that point of being into them, I found no specific one thing was taking a primary focus, because I think at a certain age you start to love everything, and nothing becomes your favorite anymore. You start to become more open-minded, and you get a little bit out of everything, as opposed to I only listen to this because this is what I like. Nothing else matters. But originally, when I was younger, those were the 3 things that really pushed me and, you know, motivated me to keep going and getting better. And
I find it interesting how music from the past is so impacting to current day. Because as we look at our ages, I was listening to those 2 groups, and you know, the Beatles, of course. And, it was even very, very little, as hard as that might be to believe, when the Beatles were on the scene. And here you are, 21?
Yes.
21, and having such great influence from great artists, and now in day-to-day artists as well. And so you're beginning to blend all of those sounds into becoming who you are. Yeah. Which is really the neat kind of thing about transitioning. Yeah. You get to borrow from whoever you like, incorporate it all, and it becomes you. Yeah. It really becomes you.
Yes.
We've been talking about your journey in living in Boston. You are currently with a couple of groups in Boston. And your favorite type of music to be playing with them would be, what would it be for you?
Anything that's got a, you know, great beat that people can dance to.
A
lot of the time I'm standing up there dancing too. You know,
you're up there dancing.
I like to enjoy it just as much as the audience. And as I should stress this: it's great to be challenged. You need it. You know, you get stagnant without it. But playing playing easy music that you're comfortable with and confident in feels great. I love that. And stuff that's open-ended where you can put your own twist on things. You don't have to do the same thing every show. I love that.
So creating some original parts in each show, making it fresh.
I also love, you know, songwriters, you know, acoustic kind of folk singers, stuff, you know, Townes Van Zant's great, the band, stuff like that. So playing gigs where you're just playing somebody's songs and just trying to, instead of being the centerpiece, just make the whole group sound better. That's a great position to be in too. Yeah.
That's a very powerful concept, especially in the culture you live today, because oftentimes folks are more interested in how can they be them, you know, how can I better myself?
Yeah.
In the concept, in the way in which you're choosing to live your life, really is about how can we be helpful to one another and help bring all of us up.
Yeah.
Some of the conversation you and I had at one point when we were having lunch, we talked about really about getting better. And really always striving for better, that there is no end to this.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about that, about your real heart's belief about this is an ongoing journey, there is no end?
Well, it's true, you know. I very much feel like the best musicians in the world are the people who realize that they're never going to reach, you know, they're in this huge thing that feels like a race almost. If you can call it that. And the best musicians are the ones who realize you're never going to stop running that race. There's always going to be someplace else to go afterwards. There's not necessarily a more complicated place or a more advanced place, but just something different. There's always something you haven't done yet, and something you can better yourself on, and ultimately, I guess, just find your own voice. It doesn't matter how complicated that voice is, but as long as you're doing what satisfies you and is really like you speaking in your own voice instead of somebody else's. But and it's, you know, I mean, I'm a kid, you know.
I know.
So I guess
a very talented kid at that.
I guess I should know it and think about it more than anybody. Is that you know, I'm a kid. There's years and years and pages and pages and tons and tons of music out there that I haven't done, and you know, there's no way to get to all of it by the time you're this age, probably. And
hard to think about even getting to all of it by the time you're 50.
Because it's not possible. You know, there's always somewhere else to go, and there's always more music being created. So there's always, music is always hundreds of steps ahead of you. You know, it's so much bigger than any one person, and I even had a teacher tell me once that you know, you can be a great musician, but all you're really making yourself is a better vehicle for the music to speak to or speak through. You know, like you're the person's like the biggest instrument of all, and the music kind of plays you. It sounds cheesy, but it was one of the heaviest things I ever heard. You know?
Actually, I think it's very wise.
Yeah.
It's a very wise statement, and I believe that it's not only through music. I believe we can, if we really absorb that statement that you just made, be that in any walk of life you choose.
Yes.
And so we all get to be artists.
Yeah.
And your art is one of beautiful sound and beautiful messages through that, and clearly it represents you. It really does represent you.
No, thank you.
What would you say to a young person at the age of 21, because it's very courageous to be 21 and to be venturing off to Boston at even younger age, and deciding, I'm going to really take a shot at this. What would you want the listening audience, both the parents to know of a 21-year-old, as well as to other folks who are in your age range, about following this passion of yours?
Yeah. I think the important thing that, I mean, I think I only really realized it a little while ago, and it's way easier said than done, is that it's so easy to, like, when you're in this position, you know, you don't have a lot of money.
Right.
And you're trying to play music, which is an expensive thing to want to do. You know, you got to travel, you got to buy new equipment for yourself, stuff like that. Is that it's so easy to pity yourself. You know, you know, you want to kind of like, oh, I have no money, and you know, nobody understands, blah blah blah. I don't have that many gigs, but the thing to understand is that of course you don't have a lot of money, and of course you don't have that many gigs because there's a billion other musicians, and you know, if you're gonna speak to yourself like that, you're going to stay right where you are. You're not going to advance. You're just going to feel bad for yourself. And, you know, I think being like that, you're almost just, in a way, making the best of a bad situation in a very twisted, you know, way, you know, like, you know, I don't have a lot of money and things aren't great, but at least I can complain.
Okay.
You know?
So would you encourage them to swap that mindset? I don't have a lot of money and I'm loving what I'm doing.
Yeah. You know, that's the life you're gonna get when you start out at this age. It's just what's gonna happen, and I'm in the middle of it right now. You know, thousands of other people my age are in the middle of it too, and it's, you know, it's not so good in the sense that, you know, financially is one thing, but it could be worse. You know, I pay my rent and I pay it doing what I love. I teach, which feels great. It's a great thing to do, and I play in bands. As long as you make enough to get by and are willing to make a couple sacrifices, it's worth it to ultimately be doing what you love, because money is secondary to that. And I feel like that would probably be pretty much the biggest thing I could convey, I guess.
So do what you love. Enjoy the mac and cheese, so to speak.
The ramen. Yeah.
The ramen noodle, whatever it is that you find yourself, you know, dining on, and keep going with your passion.
Yeah.
And you will be getting where you need to be.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to, as we get ready to come to a close, be willing to play us another tune or two and take us out with that? And,
yeah.
Because we would love to hear it. In the meantime, what I'd like you to know is how much I appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You are such a courageous young man. And I hope that you never lose your kid part, that always comes through you, that you always find that innocence.
Oh,
and again, thank you. It really is our pleasure.
Oh, thank you. All right.
How about taking us off?
I will. And I suppose I'll just kind of make some stuff up.
That sounds great.
And,
we would like to thank our viewing audience for joining us. Again, this is Rob Compa, a wonderful aspiring artist living in Boston. You can contact him by his email address that you see below. And until next time, thank you very much, and take it away.
This program was produced through Penfield Community Television in Penfield, New York.